My Genesis Mini just showed up from Amazon, a little bit dented. And while there's a whole bunch of other people who did review and unboxing videos, I feel like there's one thing I could add to the mix: lag tests. There's many different ways you could test lag, but I think the best way to do it on a Genesis Mini that's not modified is using an LED, a slow motion camera, and a CRT. Let me show you how it works. First, we'll start out by using a CRT monitor that accepts both classic game signals as well as HD signals. No processing is done in this CRT, so the time it takes from when the signal enters the back of the monitor to when the information hits the top left of the screen is under 1 millisecond. Next, I wired an LED into a Genesis controller and have it light every time the A button is pressed. Now, I'll take a camera that shoots video at 960 frames per second, fast enough that we could slow this down and watch the CRT draw each frame one at a time. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. The light that's passing from top to bottom over the screen is what's creating the image, and the data is refreshed each time the light passes over. So let's take a look at an original Genesis and count how many passes of the CRT's beam of light it takes from when the LED light indicates a button press to when the beam of light on the screen draws a change. Now, technically, this can vary, as if I accidentally press the button right before the frame is drawn, it might take an extra frame, so we'll do this test a bunch of times and find an average. So here's the average amount of time that it takes for the Sega Genesis in order to process that movement. Please keep in mind that this isn't lag. That's just how long the game takes, and for the purpose of this test, we'll call that our zero reading. So it looks like original Genesis consoles take an average of 3 frames from when you press the button on the controller to when the whip starts to crack. Now please keep in mind that this is not lag, that's just how long it takes, so for the purpose of these tests, we'll call that our zero lag measurement to start off of. Okay, now let's connect the Genesis Mini and set it to full screen mode so we can take advantage of the whole screen. I took one of the Genesis Mini controllers and wired the same LED circuit to the A button to create the same effect. Now, let's load the exact same game and run the same test multiple times. As we're watching this, you can see why even original consoles have input latency that varies by about 1 frame. If I press the button towards the end of the time the CRT is drawing the frame across the screen, it'll take an extra frame for the console to register the input. Now you can see what I meant before about this not being a flawless measurement. I could always be off by 1 frame, and I guess the LED could take an extra millisecond or so to light. That's semantics though, as we're talking about just a few milliseconds. Also, I guess the emulation might react differently to another game, but I'm still pretty confident reporting this as the average lag reading. So overall, the Genesis Mini seems to have 3 to 7 frames of variable emulation lag, and please remember that your average flat screen has 1 to 4 frames of video lag. That means depending on your setup, you could have 4 to 11 frames of variable latency, and the variable part is the problem. If it's constantly changing, you'll never be able to adjust to the delay. Now, since this is a lag test video, we also need to test the audio delay that people have been reporting with the Genesis Mini. And to show that, I'm going to play Castle of Illusion on an original Genesis first, and test the amount of time that it takes from when Mickey's butt hits an enemy after jumping to when there's a noise. It's pretty hard to tell when exactly the sound appears, so I've slowed that same footage down to 10% of the original speed and added a frame counter that shows you exactly how many frames have passed from the start to when it actually makes a sound. Now remember that there's 60 frames per second in these video games, so each one of these frames is 1/60th of a second. I don't know about you, but I'm still having a hard time figuring out exactly when the sound is starting, so I think a good way to visualize this would be to show my timeline for editing this video so that we could move ahead 1 frame at a time And as you're listening, pay attention to the pitch of the sounds when it starts to change, because that'll signify when the sound effect is starting. You could also reference the audio timeline as well to watch the waveform. The audio change in the waveform below verifies what I found. So now that we know what to look for, let's play that same clip again at 5% speed. Okay, that one did it for me. Now I'm able to both visualize and hear exactly when original hardware is supposed to start that sound effect. So let's run the exact same test on the Genesis Mini and slow it down to the same speed. And once again, the waveform matches up. In total, it looks like the Genesis Mini I received is averaging 4 frames of audio delay and 3 to 7 frames of overall emulation delay, which is about the same as a Raspberry Pi. In my opinion, that makes the Genesis Mini an awesome little collector's item and a fun way to casually play, but for any serious gaming, I'll stick with original consoles and FPGA emulation. If nothing else, this thing looks awesome, and I love that the 3-button controllers are finally getting some love. The controllers might not be perfect quality compared to the original, but they'll be fine for using my Mister, which is pretty much zero delay in both analog and digital modes. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe and consider signing up for support services like Patreon. Also, if you'd like to be kept in the loop of everything going on in the retro gaming scene, check out the weekly podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.